Welcome to the Success Mindset Podcast, where we empower you to unlock your full potential and achieve greatness. Join us as we explore the transformative power of your mindset and uncover the strategies that will help you conquer your goals and create the life that you've always dreamed of. So buckle up, get inspired, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Success Mindset Podcast, and I'm Stephen Briggs, and this podcast is about helping you think more clearly, lead yourself better, and take practical action that moves you in the direction that you actually want to go. And today I want to talk to you about a kind of decision that I think is harder than we sometimes realize. It's easy to understand why you can make a change when something is clearly broken. Maybe a customer relationship isn't working, or a process keeps failing, or a number keeps going in the wrong direction. Something happens that forces you to look at the situation and say, okay, we can't keep doing this. And those decisions, they might still be difficult, but at least the problem is obvious. The decisions I want to talk about today are different. What do you do when something still works, but you're beginning to realize it might no longer be in the future that you're trying to build? Maybe it's a service that your business has offered for years, and it still produces revenue. Customers still ask for it, and you know how to deliver it. But it takes a lot of time, and it pulls your team in a direction that you don't really want to grow anymore. And every single time you say yes to it, you make it a little bit harder to build the business that you keep saying that you want. Or maybe it's not a service, maybe it's a role. You've become the person everybody goes to when something needs to be solved. You know the details. You can usually step in and fix the problem faster than somebody else can. And for a long time, that might have been one of the reasons that you were successful. But now you're trying to develop leaders around you, and you're beginning to realize that the very thing that helped you become valuable in making it is now making it harder for everybody else to grow. And so nothing is really necessarily broken. That's what makes this difficult. Sometimes the real question isn't whether something still works. The question is whether it still belongs. And so there's a big difference between those two questions. Something can still work and no longer be the right thing to organize your future around. And I think one reason that we resist that idea is because we naturally respect what got us here. And so we have history with it. Maybe it helped build the company. Maybe it gave us security. Maybe we became known for it. Or maybe people just depended on us for it. And so there might be some loyalty attached to it. And loyalty can be a great thing. But loyalty without evaluation can turn into attachment. And then instead of intentionally choosing something because it belongs in our future, we keep protecting it because it has a place in our past. And that distinction matters. Because eventually a clear goal should do more than tell you what you need to add. It should also help you evaluate what deserves to continue. We spend a lot of time asking questions like, what else do I need to do? What new opportunity should I pursue? And what new system do I need? Who should I hire? What should I start? And those can all be good questions, but growth isn't always addition. Sometimes growth creates subtraction. And so if you want to become a different kind of leader, you might have to release some of the work that currently makes you feel important. If you want to be more focused and have a more focused business, you might have to stop saying yes to work that you're perfectly capable of doing. If you want more time for selling and leading and thinking or creating, or for your health or your family, something else might not be able to keep the same place on your calendar. And this is where clarity becomes so important. Because if the future is vague and the past is familiar, the past usually wins. Think about it. The old direction already has evidence. It already has routines. It might already have customers. People know what to expect from you. And you know how to succeed there. The new direction doesn't always have that yet. Sometimes all you have is a clear sense that this is where you need to go. And now you have to make room for something that isn't fully built yet by loosening your grip on something that already exists. And that's not always comfortable. But you cannot give the future first place while giving the past first claim on your decisions. And so I want to be careful here, because I'm not saying that you should suddenly start cutting things out of your business or your life simply because they've been around a long time. This isn't about chasing something new just because it's new. It's about evaluation. And so there's a question worth asking. What am I still protecting that no longer fits where I say I'm going? Maybe your answer is nothing. Great. But there are times when we say we want one future while quietly making another arrangement untouchable. And so we want to simplify the business, but every service stays. I want my team to take more ownership, but every important decision still comes back through me. I want more strategic time, but I'm still available for every problem. I want to grow this new direction, but the old direction still receives the best hours, the most attention, and the first claim on resources. And you can carry both for a while. Sometimes you should. There are legitimate transition periods in business and in life. If you're moving from one model to another, you may need a bridge, but a bridge is supposed to take you somewhere. At some point, you have to ask whether or not you're actually transitioning or whether you're simply adding a new goal on top of an old way of operating. And that's an important distinction. Marshall Goldsmith built an entire idea around this in What Got You Here Won't Get You There. The point isn't that what got you here was wrong. It may have been exactly right for that, season, but success can make certain behaviors harder to question because you have evidence that they worked. Being involved in everything may have helped you protect quality when your company was smaller. Saying yes to almost every opportunity may have helped you get traction. Knowing every answer may have helped you establish credibility. Pushing harder may have gotten you through a difficult season, right? None of those things automatically become bad, but there comes a time when you have to be willing to ask, is the behavior that helped me succeed at one level now limiting me at the next level? And so that's a mindset decision as much as it is an operational one. Because underneath some of those things we refuse to release is a belief about who we are. A business owner might say, I need to stop being involved in every single detail. But underneath that could be, I need to stop getting so much of my sense of value from being the person who knows everything. A manager might say, I need my people to take more ownership. But underneath that might be, I have to become
Thank you for joining us on another enlightening episode of the Success Mindset Podcast. Remember, you have the power to shape your destiny and create the life that you desire.
That might be
if you're ready to take action, subscribe to the podcast and never miss an episode. Share it with your friends and your family and help us build a community of like-minded individuals striving for success.
Good chance.
Until next time, stay motivated, keep learning,
so you can delegate the responsibility and then grab it right back. And you can remove the old service and put it back on the menu the first time that revenue gets uncomfortable. You can clear space on your calendar and immediately fill it with the same kind of work that you were trying to get away from. Which really brings us to something else that you need to understand about defining decisions. You have to decide whether you're willing to accept what the new direction costs. Every real decision creates a trade-off. You might decide to simplify the business, but simplifying could temporarily reduce some revenue. You might develop other leaders, but that means accepting that they won't always handle something exactly the way that you would. You might protect time for a higher priority, but somebody who benefited from your previous availability may not like it. And so that doesn't automatically make your decision right, but discomfort doesn't automatically make it wrong either. And so that's why it helps to name the cost ahead of time. Ask, if I really chose this direction, what changes? What becomes less convenient? Who would be disappointed? What uncertainty am I going to have to tolerate? What part of my identity might get challenged? And what will I have to learn? And am I actually willing to accept those things? Because if you don't acknowledge the cost before making the decision, the first sign of discomfort can convince you to abandon it. You think, maybe I made a mistake. Well, maybe. Or maybe you just simply are experiencing the transition that you should have expected. And there's one more piece I want you to consider. A defining decision doesn't always have to be enormous. You might not need to eliminate an entire service tomorrow. Maybe the decision is that you stop actively selling it. You might not need to completely leave the day-to-day operation next week. Maybe the decision is that one category of decisions no longer comes to you. And you might not have to resign from every responsibility that takes your time. Maybe you decide that when this current commitment ends, you're not automatically renewing it. So the decision can be smaller than the eventual change, but it needs to establish direction. There's a difference between saying, I should probably do less of this, and saying, this is not what I'm building the next 3 years around. One is a preference. The other starts influencing decisions. So here's what I want you to do this week. Don't start by asking what you need to quit. Start with a simpler question. What am I still protecting that no longer fits where I say I'm going? And then look at why you're protecting it. Is it still strategically valuable? Or is it familiar? Does it actually belong in the future? Or are you just afraid to disappoint someone? Does the business really need it? Or do you like the way that it makes you feel needed? You might decide to keep it. That's okay, but choose it intentionally. Because the problem isn't necessarily staying where you are. The problem is saying that you've chosen one future while continuing to organize your decisions around another. Some of the decisions that define you won't look dramatic from the outside. They're defining because they determine what gets your time and your attention and your resources and eventually enough of you to become real. So be clear about where you're going. Be willing to evaluate what still belongs. And when you make the decision, understand what it will require from you. Because your future doesn't become a priority just because you say it matters. Eventually, your decisions have to agree with you. I'll talk with you next time.